Thank you for being here. And I actually want to start by thanking someone in specific, and that is Bernie Sanders and all of his supporters. Why? Because they started a revolution, and that is no small thing. That is a tidal wave that will take this country over. And I don't know if they're aware of how important they are and what kind of a movement they have galvanized. So thank you, Bernie Sanders. Thank you to all of his supporters who fought so hard for him and, more importantly, for this revolution. Now, a lot of people in the media don't understand what this revolution is, so I'm here to tell you what it is. We want to change the system. Real change. Not, hey, I won a little bit on that policy, I got half a loaf. No. The system right now is corrupt. People take legal bribes and they do the bidding of their donors. That is the system that we are sick of. Now, the good news is that over 90% of the country agrees with us. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, libertarians, we all agree. What we want is to get the money out of politics and get back to something that is great, something that is American, free and fair elections. Now, I have further good news for you. We're going to win. Now, the reason we're going to win is the Founding Fathers were geniuses, and they built revolution into our founding document. You see, they were revolutionaries themselves. So when they wrote the Constitution, they decided, hey, if we don't allow for political revolution, then people will have to pick up muskets like we did. So they built political revolution into the Constitution. They give you two different ways to do that revolution. But either way, it leads to an amendment. You could do it through Congress or you could do it through the states. But the amendment is the revolution. And so what do we want the amendment to do? It's very simple. And the second reason why we're going to win, because there is no other issue that over 90% of Americans agree with. Now people will tell you, because they don't want you to take any action, that an amendment is too hard. Are you kidding me? Afterwards, they'll say, oh, but it was too easy. Never in American history has there been over 90% support for any amendment before. For example, women's rights. That was impossible. How could women get the right to vote when they didn't have the right to vote in the first place? But they did it. From the first time that they walked out into the streets and had a protest, from there to the time that they got the amendment was only 7 years, and they couldn't even vote. So by comparison, this change will be relatively easy, and we're all going to do it together. And who started it? I would argue that it was Bernie Sanders, Jane Sanders, their entire team, and you guys, all the people who fought so hard for Bernie Sanders and that revolution. America can't thank you enough. Now, I want to offer a challenge to the Democrats, because we don't have that amendment yet, and we haven't gotten that real change yet. So what is my challenge? To get donor-free by 2020. Now, oftentimes I hear the Democratic establishment ask, oh, golly gee, we gave a little bit on policy here and a little bit on minimum wage and a little bit on Social Security. What more do Bernie Sanders supporters and this revolution want? Well, we don't want you to be beholden to all of your donors. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard. So how are you going to do it? Well, in the past, you would have said, well, that's impossible, Cenk. That's unilateral disarmament. We can't have that. And I might have even agreed with you in the past. But today is a different day. Today, we already know that you could run a campaign on small donors. Bernie Sanders just did it. In fact, for most of that campaign, he outraised Hillary Clinton. We know it can be done. Now, it's probably a bridge too far to ask the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party to go donor-free today. Although if they did, they would easily win this election. They would have all of our support, and it's already proven that they could raise a lot of money. But given that they likely will not do that, here's what I'm asking them to do instead, which is very, very reasonable. How do you get us to believe in you? Well, you say, I'm going to be donor-free by 2020. If Hillary Clinton wins this election, she will run for re-election with only small donors. No corporate donors, no lobbyists, no special interests, no giant donors at all. Now, what does that do? that incentivizes her to get very, very serious about getting money out of politics. Otherwise, she might lose. Now, if it's her career on the line and she's put that as a signature policy position, well, then we would believe her. So, but this isn't about Hillary Clinton. This isn't whether she's a good person, bad person, whether we can trust her or not. It's about the entire Democratic Party. Who are you? You've got to make that decision, because now it is shown that you can prove that you are the uncorrupted party. Imagine if we had it as clear as the one party that takes all the donor money and all the corporate money, and the other that only takes small donations. Well, it would be stunningly clear who is a corrupt party and who is not. And if you did that, we know that you would want to change the system by 2020, and you would fight like hell to do that and bring us real change. And by the way, you would win the support of the people, and your chance of winning, which is, I know, something very important to the people in this room, would be much, much higher. It's a win-win. Okay, so now, I just explained to you why this election today is not the most important thing in political life. The most important thing is real change, is getting that amendment, is finishing the revolution. Does that mean that this election is not at all important? No. No, it doesn't mean that at all. As we're fighting for the revolution at the grassroots, electorally, in other elections, in primaries that are coming up, we can also vote in this election. And yes, it matters for all the reasons you've heard before. And for the main reason, which is what I'm going to lay out in a little bit, which is that Donald Trump cannot become president. So now, we do have an election in the meanwhile, and I need you to think about this scenario. Now, look, I don't want you to think that, I don't want you to consider any other candidates. I don't want you to look at and do any research on any other parties, any other candidates, and to foreclose any other options. A lot of people say that. I'm not among them. I want you to do that research. But after that, if on election day it is very obvious who the two viable candidates are, then I need you to make a rational choice. Again, that choice is not the most important choice in the world, and I need you to pick up and fight the very next day for real change. But on that day, I'm asking you to make a rational choice. And if the two candidates are Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump that are viable on that day, well, that is a no-brainer. Now, I'm going to get to Donald Trump in a second, but first I want to talk about Hillary Clinton. So am I going to come out here, like all the other speakers, and tell you how wonderful Hillary Clinton is and how she's going to save the country? No, because I don't know that. I don't know what's in her heart. I don't know if she's the person who worked at the Children's Defense Fund when she was young, or she's the person who's going to take $1 billion in donor money this election. I don't know. Is she cold and calculating? Maybe. Is she a great grandmother? We've heard a lot about how she's a sweet grandmother. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know her interaction with her grandkids. I would imagine that she cares a lot about her grandkids and that she's a perfectly good grandmother. But those are things I don't know. But what I do know is, if in a worst case scenario, she is cold and calculating and driven and tough, maybe that's just the kind of person we need to beat Donald Trump. So I know some of you might think, well, no, she's willing to bend a couple of rules. Some of you might even think she's a bastard. But on a day like today, when we need to beat a guy like Donald Trump, maybe it's not such a bad thing that she's our bastard. So, look, everything you know about her, this you cannot deny. She works hard. Now, some of you thought she worked hard against you. Some of you thought she bent some of the rules earlier. Well, she's going to work that hard to make sure she beats Donald Trump. If that's the case, that's not such a bad thing under this scenario. And we already had a primary. You know which side I was on. Now, if on that day there is only two viable candidates, then I want the other candidate against Donald Trump to win and not Trump. Why? So now let us get to the heart of that discussion. Now, some of you think, Donald Trump, he doesn't really mean any of this, does he? Well, certainly others have thought that in the past and been proven wrong. So the reality is he's a very dangerous person, and he's got a number of reasons why I think we cannot have him as president. So some you might have heard before, and some I don't think you've really heard nearly enough. So let me lay out a couple of reasons why I think Donald Trump cannot be president. So number one, he is un-American. So you didn't hear me wrong. I just said un-American. The reason I say that is because he does not understand our system of government. He doesn't understand our democracy. He doesn't understand or respect our Constitution. Look, let's take a couple of amendments. First Amendment, you cannot establish a religion. You can't discriminate based on religion. And Donald Trump says, oh, yes, I can. I don't care what's in the First Amendment. I don't care. I'm going to rule out an entire religion. That is the antithesis of this country. You see, okay, he happened to be born in Queens, but that doesn't make you an American. You have to actually believe in the idea of America. Another part of the First Amendment is freedom of the press. He has blacklists for the press. He does this without any power. Imagine what he would do with power. So this guy, you're going to let him become president, a guy who doesn't believe in freedom of the press, doesn't believe in the First Amendment. God knows what he does to us. Some people say, well, you don't know that he'll do that. You also don't know that he won't do that. In fact, he's given every indication that he will. You really want to risk the republic on a maniac like Donald Trump? Okay, and I'm just getting started. Let's go to the Eighth Amendment. It bans cruel and unusual punishment. I have to tell Donald Trump that because it is inconceivable that he's ever read it. Now, here's a guy who says, yeah, I'm going to torture people. Who cares? I don't care if it's illegal. I don't care if it's unconstitutional. I'm going to waterboard people, and I'm going to do a lot worse. Well, that's a violation of the Constitution. If you've got a guy running for president who says, I don't care about America, I don't care what your system is, and I don't care about your Constitution, you might not want to vote for that guy if you're an American. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. Every religion, every race, every American has to be treated the same. That's the heart of what this country is. Donald Trump says, nope. No, I don't believe that. I believe my kind should be treated better, and certain kinds should be treated so badly we don't even allow them into the country. So, 14th Amendment, tear that one up. Okay, how about due process? Now, I know some people on the right are very concerned about due process. So, for example, they'll say, oh my God, the terrorism watch list, we got to let those people buy guns anyway, even though they're on the terrorism watch list. Now, why? Oh, it's due process. It's just a list. And, we hear that 1 or 2% of the people on that list might be on that for the wrong reasons. You got to have due process. Donald Trump says he would not only assassinate people he considers terrorists, and by the way, we have already killed American citizens who we called terrorists, and we did that as an executive action without any due process. But Donald Trump says he would also kill their family members. If you believe in due process, if you believe in the 14th Amendment and you believe in the Constitution, you would never, ever vote for Donald Trump. Okay. Now, also, let's talk more about the idea of America. What made us great? What made us the shining city on a hill? Well, one of the things is the Marshall Plan. After we won World War II, Germany and Japan, our worst enemies, the people that we had to fight a whole war over, all those people we lost in that war, all those lives lost to the Nazis, to the people who invaded us on Pearl Harbor. And what did we do? In one of the most magnanimous acts in human history, we rebuilt those countries. And we turned our worst enemies into our best allies and to also the strongest economies in the world. That's what made America great. That's what made us the shining city on a hill. Then we did the United Nations, and we brought the whole world together. That's the best of America. And what does Donald Trump want to do instead? He wants to divide us. He wants to kill indiscriminately. He wants to torture. He wants to discriminate. He wants to drive us apart. He wants to limit liberty and close us off. Well, if he does that, what's left of America? Does he only want to keep the dark side of this country? Does he not see the lightness, the wonder, the beauty of this country? And the answer is he doesn't. He doesn't understand us at all. And I want you guys to understand something. See, there's a flag flying behind me. Donald Trump doesn't own that flag. The Republican Party does not own that flag. People who call themselves patriots don't own that flag. We all own it. That's our flag. And that the way you own it and defend it is by believing in the idea of America. You don't get to say, hey, I was born in Nebraska, I was born in Queens, so I'm going to call myself an American, and then fight against every idea and principle that that country stands for. No, we own that flag, not them. So I need you to take your responsibility seriously. We are the protectors of the idea and vision of America. Never forget that. Wherever that flag is flown, we protect our own. That includes our vision. Okay. Now, let us turn to a second reason why we can't elect Donald Trump. If the fact that he doesn't understand America and doesn't even like the concept of America isn't enough, well, there's a second reason. He's a coward. So let me explain. That is a provable fact. So first of all, he ran from Vietnam. There's no question about that. He got many deferments. Student deferment, I know a lot of people got deferments. Maybe someone you know and love got a deferment. And student deferment is an understandable one. Then he got a medical deferment. He said, there was something wrong with his heel. He got a doctor. His daddy got him a doctor to say, my heel, I can't go to Vietnam. Somebody else go die for me in Vietnam. Then, when he's running for president, another doctor that he paid comes out and says he's the healthiest 70-year-old he's ever seen. His health is phenomenal. Hey, Donald, what happened to your heel? What happened to all your medical problems? What happened to all the reasons that you ran from Vietnam? Now, it's one thing to get those deferments and to say, hey, I'm sorry, man. I wish I'd have done the right thing. Or I was against the war and I didn't want to go and die there. That's an honest position to have. But Donald Trump says, oh, no, I was for the war. Oh, my heel, I couldn't go. And then you know what he did? He wrote a book where he bragged about how he went to all those sex parties in New York while others were dying in Vietnam. He said avoiding STDs was his own personal Vietnam. It's one thing to get deferments. It's one thing to run from Vietnam. It's another thing to do it so brazenly and then rub your face in it. Oh, your kids were too poor to get a doctor to give you a nonsense reason to get a medical deferment, and they had to go die in Vietnam? Who cares? I was at a sex party, and I did such a wonderful job avoiding STDs. At least that's what he said. And then he turns around, and what does he do to the actual heroes who went? Now, look, John McCain is a guy that a lot of us disagree with. But what makes John McCain a hero isn't that he fought in Vietnam. It isn't that he got captured in Vietnam. It's that when he was captured, after they found out that he was an admiral's son, they were going to release him. And McCain said, not without the other soldiers. See, that's a hero. And you know what Donald Trump said? He said, I prefer people who weren't captured. Well, if you're in a sex party in the middle of New York because your daddy bought your way out of Vietnam, yes, you weren't captured, Donald. If that's your definition of winning, congratulations. But that's not the definition that the rest of us have. And then on top of all this, he takes the sacrifice of someone like Captain Humayun Khan. And he's a captain that died in 2004 in Iraq, Muslim American. And he says about his parents, well, maybe his mom's not allowed to speak because she's Muslim. There he goes again, dividing us on religion, dividing Americans based on fear and hatred and anger. And then they asked him, what would you say to Kaiser Khan, Captain Khan's father? And he says, when Kaiser Khan says you would have kept my hero's son out of the country. And if he hadn't been killed by a suicide bomber when he went to go engage them and brought his troops back, so many more other American troops would have died. Donald Trump says, well, there's radical Islamic terror. That's why I have the policy that I do. Do you understand what that's saying to Kaiser Khan? That's saying, yes, I would have kept your son out. I would have kept you out of the country because I'm lumping you in with those terrorists that your son was fighting. Your son died when a suicide bomber detonated his bomb. He died saving all those other people's lives. But I'm putting him in the same boat as radical Islamic terrorists and saying, well, I would have kept you all out because I can't tell the difference between you guys. I can't be bothered to figure out who's a terrorist and who's not a terrorist. I'm just going to discriminate against 1.6 billion people, including heroic Americans who signed up, fought for our country, which Donald Trump never did, and died for our country. And then he's going to go spit in their eye. This is a coward of epic proportions. Now, I'm not done with him by damn sight yet. Let's talk more about what a coward he is. You notice that everything that Donald Trump does has to do with things that he's afraid of. Oh, the Mexicans are coming. They're all rapists and criminals. We got to build a high wall. I'm so scared. I'm so scared of the Mexicans. I want the wall to be higher. Oh, the Muslims got to keep them out. Keep them out. I'm so scared. What are the Muslims going to do with this? Oh, Black Lives Matter. I'm so scared of what Black Lives Matter is going to do. Is there anything Donald Trump isn't afraid of? He's even afraid of women, 51% of the country. Remember when he ran for Megyn Kelly? He wouldn't attend a debate because he thought Megyn Kelly might ask him a tough question. What a sad, sad coward. Now, when you're president, who else are you going to run from, Donald? Well, you wouldn't run from Putin. You'd probably run into Putin and give him an old bear hug, if you will, and other dictators that you have complimented. But if somebody were to actually challenge us, would you get so scared that you'd run from them? Or you would overreact? You remember that moment when someone rushed the stage when Donald Trump was speaking at one of his rallies in the primaries? Now, nobody should ever do that, and it was a terrible idea. And I get that somebody might be scared in a moment like that. But for that brief second, you saw what Donald Trump is all about. He had his podium moment. When he heard that somebody was going to be on stage, he did this. That right there is Donald Trump. Oh, the Muslims, the Mexicans, the blacks, the women, Vietnam. All he's ever done in his life is run. You're going to put a coward like that as president of the United States, a leader of the free world? I don't think so. Now, let's turn to actually the most important reason why we can't have Donald Trump as president. Because he's a loser. He's a proven, verifiable, pathetic loser. Now, let me explain. He goes around telling you, oh my God, I'm such a winner. You'll be winning with me. I'm tremendous. Really? Do you have a track record of being tremendous? Do you have a track record of winning? No. I'm going to tell you his track record. It is one of enormous failure. Do you know how many bankruptcies Donald J. Trump has had? Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 6 bankruptcies. And then he plays it off, and some of his gullible followers believe this. So that's a savvy business move. You know what's a savvier business move? Not going bankrupt. Actually making a profit. You see, Donald, I went to the same business school you did. And I don't remember at that school where they taught us, hey, you guys, here, let's draw it up on the board here. You know what's a really savvy business move? Taking all this money that people gave you for a company and then bankrupting it so nobody's got any money left. I didn't have those professors. We didn't have those lessons because they didn't exist. You know why you went bankrupt? Not because it was savvy, but because you don't know how to run a business, you idiot. You don't know how to run one. You know what business he bankrupted? Casinos. Who loses money when they're the house? There's an actual saying, the house always wins. Now they've got to amend that saying, the house always wins unless it's run by an idiot like Donald Trump. The games are rigged, Donald. The games are rigged so the house always wins. How pathetic are you that you couldn't succeed in that business? Now, to be fair, there was another Republican who ran for president who also bungled a business that you almost couldn't lose money in. George W. Bush lost money in the oil business in Texas, and Donald Trump lost money in casinos. Boy, Republicans know how to pick him. You couldn't find any more unsuccessful, loser, silly guys to run for president than these two. And we know what Bush did to the country, and we have a pretty good sense of what Donald Trump would do. Because it isn't just a matter of calling him names, but I've got more of that coming up. It's a matter of this guy will ruin us. I don't mean to be hyperbolic, and I don't think he's going to necessarily do it on day one. But at some point, he's going to panic. Someone's going to get under his skin, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And in his grotesque incompetence, he will do something drastically wrong. Look, this guy doesn't know how to run anything. Even in his own campaign with the pathetic guys that he ran against. He lost the first primary in Iowa. Afterwards, he said, "What's a ground game? I didn't know what a ground game was." Who runs for president and doesn't know how to get out the vote, doesn't know what a ground game is? A person so incompetent, they don't realize they're incompetent. Okay, so let's go to Trump University for a second. Because think about this. I know a lot of people have talked about Trump University, and you know what kind of a scam it is. It's legendary. He's being sued right now, and they have overwhelming evidence that it was a scam. People would pay money, and then they have to sit next to a cutout of Donald Trump. Oh, that's so sad. But what's sadder is this guy who claims to be a billionaire, this alleged billionaire, was trying to scam people out of $5,000, $10,000, $30,000 at a time. Which billionaire does that? Could you imagine Bill Gates trying to scam people with a thing like Trump University? Of course you couldn't imagine that. You know why? Because he's an actual billionaire. Donald Trump doesn't have anything close to $1 billion. In fact, he talks about how he just got started with a small loan of $1 million from his dad. You guys remember when you got your small $1 million loan from your daddy? No, I don't remember that either. Now, the reality is that's not even remotely true. His father left him anywhere from $40 to $200 million. And according to a recent report, you know how much he's got left in liquid assets? $170 million. So you took $200 million and in 40 years turned it into $170 million. Wow. What a legendary businessman you are, Donald Trump. No, the reality is he has no idea what he's doing. If all he had done was take that $200 million and put it in the stock market, he would now actually be a billionaire. He would have around $3 billion. The reason he's not self-funding his campaign right now is because he doesn't have the money. He claims he has $10 billion. If you had $10 billion, it would be no big deal to fund your campaign. You could spend a whole $1 billion on your campaign and you'd still have $9 billion left. He doesn't have the money. He took his daddy's money and squandered it in 6 different bankruptcies. And he had all these silly little toys. He had a yacht. He had a plane. He had the yacht he bought from the Sultan of Brunei. And he was all over TV going, "I have a yacht from the Sultan." And then in the first bankruptcy, when he bankrupted Taj Mahal, he had to sell off all of his toys. Do you know that the bank put a limit on his personal spending? They treated him like the child that he is. They made him live on an allowance because he didn't know how to spend daddy's money. That's the kind of loser Donald Trump is. But I'm not done with him yet. So I want you to understand, at this point, Donald Trump can't get a loan from a single U.S. bank. That's part of the reason why he has to go to the Russians and ask them or beg them for money. And then he goes on TV talking about how great the Russians are. Yeah, the Russians have been great to Donald Trump. Because no U.S. bank in their right mind would lend money to a guy who's gone through 6 bankruptcies, not paid them back, is a deadbeat, and then brags about it. Says, "Oh, yeah, I didn't pay them back. That was a savvy business move." Now, which banker in their right mind would then say, "Oh, here's some new money to give you"? No banker. Isn't that embarrassing? And if you ask anyone in New York, no one will lend Donald Trump money. You know why? Because they all know Donald Trump is a loser. He is an epic, epic loser. That's what he is at his core. And he knows it. That's what makes him insecure, and that's what makes him a coward as well. And this election is his final scam. It is the long con. His whole life has been one giant scam after another, from Trump steaks to Trump water, to the buildings he doesn't build, to the illegal immigrants that he used for labor, to Trump University, and to all the companies he bankrupted. The whole thing's been a scam. And this is the final part of that scam, where he wants you to be his next victim. He victimized the people who lent him money, who victimized the people who worked for him. He victimized the people who trusted him at Trump University. And now he wants to victimize the American people and get you to believe in him and vote for him. Well, I want you to do the opposite. What I want you to do is to give Donald Trump, loser Donald, one last loss. Boy, that would be the perfect way to send him off. The cherry on top of his loser career. You know, he's a reality show clown, so let's make him the biggest reality show clown of all time. Make him the biggest loser. Hey, then Donald, ironically, you'll be winning with losing. You'll be the #1 loser. That's what I want you to do. Now listen, I told you, this election is not the most important thing, but it is something that is going to happen, and someone is going to win it. I want you to fight before the election. I want you to fight after the election. I don't want you to stop fighting ever until we get free and fair elections, until we get money out of politics, until we get our democracy back, until we finish that revolution and get that amendment and get our government back from the people who bought it and corrupted it. And we're going to do that, and we're going to win, a real win. But in the meanwhile, on that day in November, go and do your duty as an American and vote. And when you go to that voting booth, the answer is super obvious. Don't vote for the un-American coward loser who might ruin this country. You've got a lot of options. Go investigate them, for God's sake. And if there's another viable option, I hear you. And I'm not here to make the case for any one candidate. I'm here to make the case against the candidate. Yes, someone is worse in this election, and that is patently obvious. So go send him off in his final loss. I love you guys, and whatever you do, remember, keep up the fight. We're going to get that amendment. Good night, and keep America, America.